Okay, let's begin. Thank you very much for attending. So this is a panel to discuss, in effect, what happens next. Just to remind you, because of course you've only heard the findings very quickly a moment ago, but so let me just remind you what the main findings are. First of all, in relation to human rights, it was the panel's unanimous judgment that the Islamic Republic of Iran is responsible for violating a range of rights and freedoms, including the freedom of assembly, the right to life, the right to liberty and security of the person, freedom from enforced disappearances, freedom from torture and other cruel, inhumane and degrading treatment or punishment, including sexual violence and rape, the right of access to justice, the right to dignity, including dignity of the dead. That was one principal finding, which was unanimous. More than that, the panel also found that the evidence established beyond a reasonable doubt that the Iranian government and its security forces designed and implemented a plan to commit crimes against humanity of murder, imprisonment, enforced disappearances, torture and sexual violence in order to quell the protests and conceal the crimes committed. And by a majority, the panel also found, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the criminal plan included the crime against humanity, the crime of humanity of persecution. That is, the protesters and the bystanders were discriminately targeted for their collective involvement in the protests and/or their perceived association with the group, and their rights severely curtailed or denied. And finally, and of course the judgment is going to be much more detailed than this, and I'm just giving you the headlines. Finally, we found unanimously that there was a powerful case to answer against certain individuals, that according to international modes of liability, the evidence established that certain individuals, including the Supreme Leader, were more likely than not to have significantly participated in the crimes, significantly participated in the planning and design of the criminal plan, and shared the criminal intent for the entirety of the crimes. So just to give you a quick reminder of what the findings are. And of course, as you will appreciate, those we named were just the tip of the iceberg. The available evidence suggests that many more individuals from the Iranian government and its security forces were part and parcel of the criminal plan, designed it, implemented it. And you'll also appreciate, of course, that these findings are particularly timely given the current events in Iran and the Iranian government's apparent treatment of Mahsa Amini, who had the temerity to wear a hijab in the manner of her own choosing and ended up paying for it with her life. Driven by the morality police to a detention center for so-called re-education, 3 days later, she was dead. And so as we speak, the protests are once again being brutally crushed as they were in Aban 2019. Dozens have already died and many more are injured. And so this panel, which contains some wonderfully knowledgeable experts, are going to look at these findings and discuss what happens next. I want to just remind you of a quote by the famous Indian author Arundhati Roy. Quote, "There's really no such thing as the voiceless. There are only those deliberately sidelined or preferably unheard." And so my question to the panel is, how do we enable the voices of the Iranian people to be heard. We couldn't have a better panel to answer those questions. First of all, to my right, Professor Javed Rehman, UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran. He has been that since 2018. He's a professor of international human rights law and Muslim constitutionalism at Brunel University in London. He's written extensively on the topic of international human rights law, Islamic law, and constitutional practices of Muslim majority states. To my immediate right, MEP Evin Insier, who is a Swedish social democrat, member of the EU with Kurdish roots, who grew up in the suburbs of Bergenschön in the Swedish city of Gothenburg. I'm sure I've pronounced that badly. She's a member of the European Parliament since 2019 and is serving on the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs, the Committee on Development and Committee on Foreign Affairs. Most recently, she joined the committee to investigate the use of Pegasus and other surveillance spyware in Europe. In addition to her committee assignments, Insier is part of the Parliament's delegation to the EU-Turkey Joint Parliamentary Committee, the European Parliament's rapporteur in charge of the relations with Palestine, and a member of the LGBTIQ intergroup. Evan is the former Secretary General of International Union of Socialist Youth and former Deputy International Secretary of the Social Democratic Party of Sweden. She fights to promote democracy, equality and feminism in Europe and beyond. And to my immediate left, Baroness Sandip Verma. Baroness Verma served as Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Department for International Development from May 2015 until July 2016. She's been a Conservative member of the House of Lords since 2006 and previously served as Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for DECC. Prior to becoming the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for DECC, Baroness Verma was spokesperson for Cabinet Office, International Development, Women and Equalities, and Business Innovation and Skills. And last but not least, Regina Paulus is an international criminal law attorney, co-counsel to the Aban Tribunal, and I can confirm her abilities. She previously served as the chair of the steering committee of the UK Child Sex Abuse People's Tribunal and served as a member of the independent panel on the China Tribunal, which focused on forced organ harvesting. She's the editor of People's Tribunal's Human Rights and Law, published by Routledge, and is a contributing author to the volume focusing on victims' rights.